Saudi in the US, it's really significant compared to the size of an economy like Saudi Arabia. It's way, actually multiple folds of any other nation, i.e. any other nation we invest in. And the same the other way. There are a lot of investments from the US in Saudi Arabia, and particularly since the start of Saudi Vision 2030, we have seen actually a significant pickup. Saudi Vision 2030, and I'm sure a lot of the attendees here are aware of what Saudi Vision 2030, but in brief, it's really a long-term vision, a North Star, that actually for the last 7-8 years drove significant part of the society, if not all part of the society, towards one goal, which is transforming this nation economically, socially, and financially to a more sustainable path. We were significantly reliant on one commodity for an extended period of time, which was basically so volatile. So you have the booms and busts in the economic cycles, depending on where the oil price is, and that was not sustainable. So when you have a leadership that actually sets a very clear vision, mobilize the nation behind it, people of Saudi Arabia then really owns it, and they see that actually this is their vision, this is their country, this is their transformation. That's what happened. What happened in the last 7-8 years is incredible in a lot of ways, and I'll give just a few examples. I mean, if you look at some of the very difficult structural changes that requires quite an extended period of time, private investment as a percentage of GDP. I mean, this is a structural anchor in any economy, and to shift it, to increase it, takes really ages and decades sometimes. We had a more than 50% growth in the private sector investment as a percentage of GDP, from 16, short of 16 to about 23% now. That is significant. Mm-hmm. This is a long-term investment. The capital formation is significant. Unemployment, we have in the last quarter the lowest unemployment in Saudi history ever, 3.5%. And amongst the nationals, amongst the Saudis, we have achieved our target for 2030 last quarter, which is 7%. Women empowerment is significant. So bringing half of your society to the productive part of the economy is significant, and that drove a serious change. You know, moving from 17% of women participation in the workforce to 36% is a serious structural change. I could go on, but if you look at even, just I'll leave you with one note, in the tourism, which basically then connects to mobility and logistics, etc. Tourism, we had a target of 100 million visits as per the Tourism International Organization for 2030. We achieved that 2 years ago, simply because there were a lot of attractions in Saudi, and then the nationals did not have to travel abroad. They then had significant expansion of local tourism in addition to inbound tourism. So a lot is happening. In the context of, I mean, just reminded by our discussion backstage a few weeks back when we met in Miami, we talked about what is really happening in Saudi and what kind of investment and investors are we attracting. And we touched on the family offices.
Families and founders.
And that is significant. And I think having that kind of discussion and just showcasing what is happening in Saudi Arabia to the individuals in the US is critical, and I think it's an area where we are focusing on. His Excellency Khalid Al-Falih, I think, touched on some of this in his speech.
Tell us what you think are the biggest opportunities, finance and economic opportunities, job creation opportunities, both in the Kingdom and in the United States, between our two countries.
Well, this requires another 2 hours. Dina, I mean, there are a lot, to be honest, there are a lot that can be done. I think the US is the envy and has been the envy of the world in terms of the entrepreneurship spirit, innovation, and technology. And you could see that in the productivity amongst possibly every country in the G20. US stands out in terms of the growth and productivity. That's an area where we are focusing on and trying to see where we can actually utilize that kind of expertise in the US to fuel the Saudi economy. We have, as few international commentators said, that this is possibly a very bright spot in the internet. If you look at the international map in terms of where the growth is, it's a young population, it's a technology-savvy population, it's a government that is willing to move. It's a government that does not have an ego to change when they think things are not moving in the right direction, and very agile. And I think we have this common features that I think we can, from both sides, benefit from. I would encourage, seriously, I would encourage investors who are not familiar with what is happening in Saudi to actually just have that opportunity to come and visit Saudi Arabia, meet with the Saudi investors and even the young population to see how really very much positive thinking driven this population is.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you both so much for an excellent panel and for starting off the summit so well. We're so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to get a Saudi perspective from His Excellency. I think Larry's right. There was this enormous boost of excitement, interest, but I think some of the markets within the kingdom were still growing. Capital formation, the kinds of products that actually needed to be built in order to implement some of this growth, particularly from a capital markets perspective. I think you have done a great deal of that now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And yes, I think the kingdom has marched through with all of these objectives, and to be in the beginning, and I think Sarah is very close to that, the stock market in Saudi Arabia was a very limited one, and now it's one of the largest. It's the seventh, I think, market. We have advanced in diversifying the economy, be it in terms of government revenues, or be it in terms of the exports, or in terms of the domestic production itself. All of these we have done. I mean, if you look at what is happening in the tourism industry, for example, a society, you remember probably when you first visited, was, relatively speaking, a closed economy. Now, tourism is huge. Women's participation rising from negligible number to 36% participation rate. So there has been a lot that has really happened. And in the world of finance, we are contributing our share, but also our economy now needs more because our ambitions are much greater than they were in the past. So we do rely on bankers and financiers, and we rely on those who develop instruments that are useful for our operations. For example, from the Islamic Development Bank perspective, where our bread and butter is basic infrastructure, we need those joint operations. We need that co-financing. I mean, we just signed a couple of months ago to participate in the Rogon Dam in Tajikistan. This is a $6 billion project, but it's going to influence the whole Central Asian region. And one lender could not have done it. We were there, the World Bank was there, the Saudi Fund for Development was there, the other Arab lending institutions were there. So it is going to happen, and it will have a huge impact on the development of that country. And I could give you many, many examples like that, where joint financing is done, where cooperation is done, and even instruments are being developed.
Creation.
Instruments are doing. For example, we have the sukuk. That's our contribution to the world of finance, and I think we only scratched the surface. There's a lot to be done there.
I know one of the bankers you rely on is Jane Fraser and her outstanding team at Citi. Also a long history in the kingdom. But I would say, I think Citi, you under your leadership has deepened the relationship. Maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Oh, it's always wonderful to be back in the kingdom, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's such an exciting time at the moment because you're watching the different ecosystems develop. So having, particularly with what PIF is doing, building out, whether it's in tourism, whether it's in life sciences developing, in gaming and sports, as well as obviously AI, which is opening up so many opportunities. And the piece building on what Larry was talking about, which I think is so wonderful but also quite remarkable of what the kingdom's done, is this is now mutually beneficial relationship. This isn't the US coming in saying to Saudi what the advice is and what to do. This is about trying to support a partner, but equally a partner supporting the US back home as well. And the different areas that we're seeing is starting to bring new forms of monetization, the securitization market getting built out. I can imagine a next step will be building out a treasury center here. How do we begin deepening and further scaling the capital market, following on the success that you were talking about in the local equity market? So for all of us, it's not just a case of seeing Saudi getting to its rightful place in the global economy, but it's seeing the economy here leading in many of these new ecosystems, and in that sense, I think the innovation is there to be watched, because here is where it's happening.
Definitely. Sarah definitely was not born in 1991. And how impressive is it that she is the head of Tadawul, and frankly that it has grown so much under your leadership, very nascent, very difficult, choppy waters. You have not only created the market here, you have really made it the 7th largest exchange in the world.
Thank you, Dina. I think I'm very proud to say, with continuous excitement, that now in 2025, 7-8 years into Vision 2030, that this vision has turned Saudi Arabia to a reliable, investable destination. And this is proven by numbers, and I think this is just the beginning. And that is through all the efforts that was been done under the leadership of the kingdom, with the vision and with the financial sector development program, and everyone working in the capital market to actually create a market that is globally integrated, that is open and trustworthy. And that only happened with public-private partnerships. All the reform and regulation was met with serious innovation, whether from the Saudi participant or also many of the international participants, particularly US banks. I can mention Larry here, BlackRock, actually one of the first to launch ETFs. Franklin Templeton, Jenny also launched a bond fund and ETF last year. I know also Citigroup has just signed also with PIF a new private credit, I think, fund to invest in Saudi, and many others. All this as well happened with a lot of partnership with international partners, but particularly since we are in the Saudi-US Investment Forum, I would like to mention a few examples of a very old relationship. One of them, if we talk about capital market infrastructure, our systems is a partnership between us and NASDAQ that goes more than 20 years back. And now we're working together on upgrading those systems. We have a very advanced stock exchange that was successful in listing the largest listing of Aramco in 2019, where many, I think, and that proven the seriousness of our stock exchange and that we are at a playing level field with the rest of international stock markets, which also led us to be one of the 10th largest exchanges in the world. Sometimes we're the 10th, sometimes we're the 9th, depending on the day and what you look at.
You got promoted to 7 today.
Maybe we reached the 7th at a point in time, but I think the latest data, I think we're the 10th or 9th. And in terms of foreign ownership in the market, it was a journey that started from 2015, but was actually accelerated in 2017. Many partners here also with me on stage were part of this. We worked very closely with investors, BlackRock one of them, to actually work with the indices to convince the international community that to be included in the market in the global indices like MSCI, S&P, FTSE, and others, and be part of the global markets. As a result, from zero QFIs in 2015, 2017 was the launch. Today we have more than 4,000. And I can say that almost 55% of foreign investment through QFI program in our market is US-based. Mm-hmm. And this also demonstrates the deepness of this relationship.
It really does. I was with His Excellency Minister Al-Farah and Jenny Johnson in LA last week, and he really praised you, your leadership, what Franklin Templeton has done, particularly in the last few years, to double down on your investment here. And I think Sarah describes one of the ways you've done that. What's the rest of kind of the Franklin Templeton investment here in the Kingdom?
Well, first of all, I was thinking, my first time coming in the Kingdom was in 2020, and I've probably been here, I don't know, 15 times. So Larry, even though you're 65, I feel like I'm, catching up on pace. So actually, Franklin Templeton's been in the region for 25 years, and we acquired a company in 2007 that does local equity and fixed income in the region, and so have a pretty big Islamic finance practice. And so actually just last month we launched a Sukuk private credit. We have a Sharia technology fund. And so not only do we have capabilities, I think, from a global standpoint, but also local. And I think that's really important because part of the opportunity is being able to structure products, and I know that's something that we focus a lot on, that really provide financial inclusion. And so being able to bring in global products, but with kind of a local flavor is important. We opened an office here 2 years ago. We have investment folks in that office, so it's not just a kind of a servicing office, but is a local investment office. And then I would just say that to Larry's point about the Kingdom, first of all, I did bring my executive committee here, and they are global investors. And they were shocked by the pace of change. And of course, I looked at them and said, your job is to actually see these things in advance, but you have to be here because honestly, people's view is like they've never seen a country evolve so and transform so dramatically, so quickly. But to the point that Larry was making around the investment, we used to always come here because you wanted to find dollars to invest outside, and now it's about, with 50% of the economy non-oil, it's about the great opportunities inside the country that gets really interesting.